moves ahead.
Checkmate. 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 You won!
None of your sneak attacks. This is not the ghetto.
I don't need to sneak. Checkmate.
This year's gold medalist, Fiona Mute.
Your children are blessed because they have a mother who never gave up on them.
Are you my daughter?
Yes, Mama, Yes! Coach, you told us to make a plan, but I fear things will never change.
What matters is when you reset the pieces.
She's winning. She's winning.
And play again.
Stronger than your bruises, I got thick skin.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry if I started with a video, but since Roberto put me always after lunch, I thought about a video would have been useful. For those of you that didn't see this film, I strongly suggest to see it. And for those of you that think it's too romantic or is just fluffy compared to IRR, compared to technical description of a geothermal power plant, I suggest you to think twice. And I hope I will convince you about this, as I will convince you that the title that we selected for the presentation, for the speech, can be slightly modified to reach an higher IRR. Now, as always. Okay, look also at this sentence. It's at the beginning of the film. And again, if you're coming from a technical background or a finance background as I am, if you look at this, we look a little bit weird. But think about during the presentation. The film that I saw with my kids over Christmas remind me. Oh, he restarted. So it reminds me 4 words that can be very useful for us thinking about renewable and sustainable development in Africa, that are talents, perseverance, openness, and opportunities. And in the video, you see the story of a lady that is coming from a slum in Uganda and is becoming the best players of chess in her country, so changing the life. And you may think that is very far from our technical experience. This gentleman that you see on the left was a young kid in the Lake Victoria in Kenya, and then become an Harvard professor, Celestus, I think most of you know. It's an innovator. It was an innovator because he passed away last December. But no one thought about these young kids, not particularly wealthy, in Kenya to become an Harvard professor. It's not the path that you will see. But out there, if we focus on people, we can change things. Now, let's go to the 4 words. Speaking about talents, and excuse me for not having traditional presentation. Speaking about talents, most of the time we consider when we do a power plant or we plan our activities in renewable, we consider a lot of things and we think about people as a commodity. And we think the regulation will suddenly come on geothermal or on auction by chance. But without people, for sure, we will not get anywhere and we'll never fix the prosperity puzzle that at the end of the day, whatever you do in your path of life, either a teacher or a producer of renewable energy, you want to win. Now, talent is important to recognize which is the future of energy. I was just talking with one of the youngest, probably youngest person in this hall, and it's important. I listened to Roberto when I was 27, and thanks to him, I moved to renewable, and I wish other people can listen to people that are discussing today, because it's very important. We know all the conditions that are all around. Roberto was mentioning the price of oil. We can say that today is not influencing renewables, but as an economist, I can tell you that has influenced heavily renewable when it went very low. So sometimes we can profit from condition out there, but again, without people, we cannot go anywhere. And I put this picture, I bet at least 1/3 of this room knows this gentleman. This gentleman was a guy by the name of Piero Ginori They started to utilize heat coming from the ground to produce electricity. But be careful, it wasn't just Mr. Piero Ginori that drew the picture and draw the engineering, let's say, behind the actual geothermy, but to build up them machines, he needed people. People with skills that were particularly talented to do a job that was not done until then, and they created the geothermal industry. Maybe it would be wise tomorrow, when thinking about the geothermal capacity, theoretical capacity that Kenya can have, to think about that people are the key element. Sure, you need to drill, sure, you need to do exploration, sure, you need cash, but without people, you will not go anywhere. Again, if you see the film, or if you think about the story of the Harvard professor, talent cannot be reached without having people scouting for talent. And it's extremely important because we need to invest in teachers, professors, the people, mentors that stay close to you, otherwise we'll never reach talent. And don't get into the trap that workers are available everywhere. Now, this is a cover that supposedly say that workers in Europe are everywhere. Guess what? In Enel, we are struggling, they are struggling, I should say, to find data scientists. Because nowadays we need data scientists and they're not there. Probably in this country to find a geothermal engineer with experience at this stage would have been difficult, but if someone think about the potential for exploration, we may train engineers. We may train engineers, as I say. Let me talk about perseverance. Very complicated word in English. It's as complicated in Italian. I don't know how it sounds in Kenya. Now, I was a young kid in the year 99, and I was posted by Enel in California, the first employee in California, and I met a gentleman called Jeff Bezos. Was in a pretty crappy office. If you Google Jeff Bezos' first office, was in a pretty crappy office, slightly smaller than the one Professor Da Silva has today across the street. And then you know what came out with Amazon. So perseverance in having a clear mind about what human being can do for our industry. We cannot do without human being. I was last April at a meeting of World Bank with donors, people putting heavy check on the table of World Bank for doing activities. And the guys at World Bank were presenting X kilometers of medium voltage lines, Epsilon megawatt hours, all for Africa. It was dedicated to Africa. And a gentleman from Denmark, probably the highest donor ever in World Bank for this program, say, if you are not working on capacity building, we are not giving any more money. Because medium voltage lines as cable are not a constraint. Cash is not either a constraint nor solar panel. Without people, I'll tell you, we cannot go anywhere. And we need to have this stick in mind because sometimes it looks cooler to do building a 200 megawatt solar power plant in the middle of Brazil, but training 100 kids or training 200 PhD students is as important and has a longer term return. Talking about the other, let's say, characteristic that I hope you will consider, we need to talk about openness. Openness, I think, for Africa means learning from past experience that have been done elsewhere and interpreting it in their own way. Now, for sure, there are a few things that we have learned in other parts of the world. First, that the planet in some shape or form is changing. I put eating because Africa is most of the time exposed to drought, but if you go to Paris, in the outskirts of Paris where I studied, you know that floods is the name of the game. So the things out there are changing, and despite what Mr. Trump thinks or whatever you think, it's more than likely that we did it, or we heavily contribute to those changes. Then we need to be open to the fact that technologies may finish. You know, we are, I love particularly these things because I showed to Mr. Marchionne, and in a private meeting he told me that I was right, and last week he declared that the electricity, the sustainable mobility powered by electricity is the name of the game and will be the name of the game. But flexibility in the way we are open to technologies, and here there are experts of innovation, is very important. We need to realize that a fuel like oil may end up and may open up finally the Cinderella option becoming reality. We need to be aware that there are things like artificial intelligence and robots out there. And you may think about what you are saying, that if we go out of the Strathmore Road, there is a slum. I'll tell you that probably robots and artificial intelligence are going to be more useful in this part of the planet than in other parts of the planet. But so clearly we should go for innovation without forgetting another important things. I was saying about the prosperity puzzle. Sometimes people, when the countries are developing, economies love to look at GDP. If the GDP is increasing, it's fantastic. But we need to look at the rest of the people around us. If not for any, let's say, human being passion, romantic ideas, for the fact that it's scientifically demonstrated that a society that is not homogeneously developed. So everybody has food, has health, has a shelter. Everything you can think for your kids or for your kids to come is going to be unstable. So we got a call. It's a timer. No, I'm joking. They didn't even know that there was a timer, but I'm finishing. So the importance, when you look at GDP and are looking more at students or people that need to select their career, or to investors like Michele that is in the room, don't look only at GDP, because GDP may tell you that the whole country is wealthier, but then if only a small piece of the country is wealthier and the rest of the country is left behind, this is not going to work. A windmill will last for 10 years, more or less. We want to be sure as an investor that the country is stable. Even if you don't do because you believe in humankind, do it for your bloody IRR. The IRR will be more secure if the country is more stable. And finally, let me talk to you about, with this picture, about opportunities. And I leave here. Opportunities are important, but we need to reach a critical mass. Now, we just started a project with Roberto and Marco on the Microgrid Academy. We will start a project for PhD students and MS students in the electricity, on sustainable electricity. But if we don't reach critical mass, it means that you will have 1,000 courses in all Africa for students, and each and every course will invest €1. Now, what happens when you're setting a course? There are overhead. You have to pay someone for organizing. You have to find classroom. All the overhead get lost. If we try to converge in doing education, because we are all pretty convinced that, apart probably from, again, Mr. Trump, the renewable are there to stay, and that you cannot dispatch renewable electricity without lines. And Roberto was mentioning this morning, the lines has to be smart because it needs to accommodate a good portion of renewable. But if we want to make a sense out of education, we need to reach critical mass. And I put Bill Gates because you know him probably for the all philanthropy activities that he does, but count the number of partnerships that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has on the ground in this country, in other countries, and you will realize that they are convinced that only by joining forces you can train people and make an impact. So, divided surely we fall, and what I would suggest for the time being, for the future, that we think first about multi-flag capacity building. We don't give a damn if we put together a course of Enel Foundation or Restful Med or whatever. Anyone that wants to help and has good willingness and has a focus, knowing that people can make this country or this continent sustainable, has to be together. So not capacity building, multi-flag capacity building, more people to work together, and listening, because Roberto remembers well that the auction in renewables were not invented in Europe, were invented elsewhere, and we started to love renewable after our North African colleagues start to play the auction game. So it's not by the color of your skin or where you have studied that you can, but putting forces together we can do things, And finally, in the title there was accelerate. To accelerate means something that goes faster, but if you don't have it, it goes anyway. Renewable in this country or sustainable development in this country, in this continent, will not happen without people and will not happen without a proper education. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the presentation as well. And now, I would like to call on the stage Dr. Isael de Silva, who is the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research and Innovation at the Strathmore University. He's actually going to be taking us through the entire session for capacity building. But I think he's supposed to say a few remarks and then he can call Marco. I think so, yes.
Yeah, so I am told, and I like obeying, that I am to make some few remarks before we start this panel. And what I will say is that the panel is packed with 10 people who are very powerful. They have very many good ideas. And we have short time. So, well, I'm not very sure how we'll handle that. But one thing I can promise you, you will not be bored. You will not feel like checking your email on your phone. Yeah, I don't see anybody with laptop here. So, but we take it on us. That is going to be exciting. So, Marco Aresti is meant to come and make a strictly 5 minutes presentation on the Microgrid Academy. And that is what he is going to do. Immediately as he finishes, we go in there and then we start, as Robert said yesterday, start in your seats and then let's go for this journey. Thank you. Arrest.
Prova. We are artists. We would like to be artists. Not this one. I know. This is different. Okay, you got it. Hello everybody, I'm Marco Aresti. I work in Rest for Africa more or less 1 year and some months. And I remember that we have been here 1 year ago. And this is a beautiful the drawings that one friend of mine done for us for the Academy. So what happens? 1 year ago, just after the last presentation inside this room, all of us, Luca, Roberto, and other friends, was outside. They say, was just finishing, and you say, okay, Roberto, what we will do next year? So just coming outside from this room, we was thinking to what bring after 1 year in this country. And we decided to write some pillars: capacity building and training opportunity, improvement of public-private partnership, promotion of state-of-the-art technology, implementation of a concrete project in the region. So, Microgrid Academy. That is a first of kind, because we don't know what happens in the future. During the side event of G7 Energy that we organized in Rome, with KPLC, we announced that we have an agreement to develop the project. It was April of 2017. So what is the Microgrid Academy? It's a real mini-grid plant that we dedicate to the students to train themselves and to understand how to operate the plants. So we want to train about 400 students every year. And we have a partner, a strategic partner, KPLC, that is public-private partnership. So you already seen 2 pillars. The target group is students from East Africa, Europe, and US. Where is the academy? Where will be the academy? It will be inside the KPLC Institute of Study and Research Layout. I speak as where will be, but we can say where is, because you will see later on. So we have a dedicated area for us, and we have a building, 2 floors. We have 2 classrooms on the 2nd floor, a laboratory on the ground, and around the classroom we have the mini-grid that people can use. We have one PV field on the roof, one on the ground, and at the end it will be a hybrid mini-grid. So we will have wind, solar, battery, storage, a diesel generation, and the plant is connected to the grid. That means that we demonstrate once again that the mini-grid can operate off-grid and on-grid without any problem. This is for the engineers that likes design the layout of the plant. But what we will teach to the student, we have more or less 4 pillars. So the first target and the first student are technicians coming from the community that have their own, let me say, mini-grid in operation, but need to be reinforced in terms of skills. Then we have specific training for people that want to go deeply inside a specific matter. For example, I want to understand everything about energy storage, about inverter configuration. So the second pillar is specific training. Then for sure, people are far from Nairobi, so we will implement also some platform for online remote class. And the last pillar is for the entrepreneur, the managers, the people that want to proceed in the step to be entrepreneur and design their own projects. So we say that the Microgrid Academy will be or is. The Microgrid Academy started on January 15 with more or less 15 students, and there are, some of them are in the room, so this conference is part of the, can you please set up a little bit, just to, we have some of the students, okay, here. Unfortunately, here we have more the Italian one, because the people from, as you can see, Uganda, Tanzania should come back. The people from Kenya, they are here or around. So people come from different countries, East Africa and Italy. They are technicians, they are university students, they are manager or PhD student. Where they come from? The organization, NGOs, AVSI, CEFA, Tecnologie Solidali, because we want to work also with the NGO, developing projects with a multi-stake approach. We have people from KPLC that host us, but they also operate 20 mini-grid. We have Strathmore, Jomo Kenyatta University. Then we have people from company, Talek Power, Equatorial Power, and then we have the student from Italy. This is one of the, so with this slide, we say that we completed our partnership. So we have all the skills, all the information needed to really deploy the project. In August 2017, the project became East African project because EACRE endorsed the project. So it's official that this is not a Kenya project, it's East African project. Along the last year with Strathmore, we consolidated the partnership, and last month of 2017, with AFSI Foundation and San Kizito, they enter in the project, and they will probably really manage it from the operational point of view of the project. It's clear that what we have done up to now is thanks to everybody that helped us, and first of all is Enel Foundation, as Carlo Papa says. It's clear that now we are setting up the project, but to train 400 people for 3 years, we need some more money and some more support. So we are approaching private company, a foundation of companies, ministries, the development agencies, European Commission, Development Bank, in order to have all the support, economical support to bring these 400 people every year in Nairobi. What we have done up to now is also thanks to REST for Africa members, someone supporting the design, someone give us for free the equipment, someone is supporting us for the legal aspect, and we have also some other external contribution for the training part. So the project, we can say, Microgrid Academy after 1 year exists. This is the result, the students are here. This is what, outside there is, in the exposition area, if someone wants to have some more information, you can come and see. So thank you for your... of technical issues, but in the video that you can reload in YouTube, there are people speaking, so you can listen to the people, what they say. Now we have of music and the video. So the real video, a lot to see people speaking, and what their testimonial is quite interesting. So thank you everybody, and thank you Professor Micani, Shone, Saverio, all the team that support this training.
Thank you very much, Marco. Applause for Marco. And I'm sure we all enjoyed the presentation on the Microgrid Academy that I'm sure I would have loved to be a part of if only I was 5 years younger. I don't know if now would be a good time renewable energy. I think I should think about it. So now we're going to get into that conversation to accelerate economic development. And I don't know, should I call your discussants for you? All right. Number is the DVC going to moderate. So I'm going to call out some guests who are present this afternoon for this session. Jeremiah Kiplagat, who is the director at Kenya Power International, KPLC. And we also have Murugi Ndira, Global Center of New York. Matt is the engineering for Columbia University. Round of applause. Timothy Volk, who is a senior state university of New York. And Tiro is the chief urban at the here in Nairobi. Professor Makay Okure from Makerere University's capacity building expert as well at the East African Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. Alice Amayo, who is Executive Secretary of the Association for Rural Electrification, ER. We have Alice here today? Yes. And we have Harry Andriantavi. I hope I pronounced that right. Okay, I think I mixed up the titles. Sorry about that. Alice Amayo actually is a capacity building advisor, promotion of solar hybrid mini grids in Kenya at GIZ. And I told Harry, I'm sure there's someone who is going to be speaking of. Andrea Mikangeli, who is the Renewable Energy Systems Professor. Did I pronounce that right? He is actually a Renewable Energy Systems Professor at Sapienza University of Rome. That's in Italy. And finally, we have Francesca Oliva, who is a focal person for energy and social entrepreneurship initiatives, AVSI Foundation. I can comfortably say we have a 1/3 gender rule on this panel. So we have 3 ladies, and we can understand the rest of them are gentlemen. So Dr. De Silva, take it away.
Thank you very much. I have to repeat what I said this morning about capacity building, that what makes a country is not perhaps the natural resources, neither the infrastructure, but is people, passionate and skilled people. There is a kind of a documentary called The Man Who Made America. I don't know if you have seen it. If you haven't, I advise you to watch. It's very nice. Talks about Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, Carnegie, Henry Ford, and other people who actually made America. the made Italy or Kenny human. These people here, one way or another, we are very fond of capacity building. When you teach people, you are doing more than writing a book, because you are writing in the souls of these people, and you know a soul lives forever. Yeah? So that is what is the kind of the underline of this very exciting panel here. And then if you were to see how, it isn't me, isn't it? Outside, yes. I thought I was being blocked. Yes. If you were to see how much these people here have in terms of degrees and masters and PhDs, and how much it costs their education, it would be you have to be a serious millionaire to afford them. Yes? So as Luca Marena did in the morning, and I want to follow, because he says it's best practices. I'm going to ask questions from each one of these people here. But I hope that if we manage to do all the questions before, I would love to open the forum for you to also ask questions, because obviously the most important people of this room, they are there. Yeah? I think so. Very well. So my first question is to Dr. Jeremy Kiplagat. He is the one hosting the Mini Grid Academy in Kenya Power. So my question, Dr. for you is why and how do you decide my Grid Academy? So, and how?
Thank you very much. We're privileged to host this academy already given the presentation. And we are doing this because we do understand here that without the right people with the right skills succeed. And our mandate as Kenya Power is to provide power to distribute, and you are aware that the Kenya government wants everybody to have power in the next few years, by 2020. And much of this, especially in the rural areas, we have to use off-grid to achieve that. And that is why we are very interested when we had this discussion with Rest for Africa to really be on the front line to ensure that we have the right people so that projects can succeed and succeed. That is it. What was the other question, sir?
It was why and how. How?
So how is through partnership. We cannot do alone. And that's why partnership is key. And that's why this is becoming an international center. And we are very happy. You can see from a profile of the... So Red was helping us in this, and it was an agreement. Partners came on board, including now, and Stratmore, of course, is a key person. And through the Ministry of Energy also, this program was, and we are having a regional project under the IACRE, the East Africa Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. So it is one of the projects. We are looking at the whole region. So it is a multi-sectoral. This is the way bring experts from different to do achieve more ourselves.
Very much. One thing about the system, grid tie in Stratmore is worth, anyway, we have a laboratory used by the Microgrid Academy. When you go studying, say, grid tie and the hybrid systems, you can come work together very well. Thank you. And now, go to the other side. A question to Madame Njiragu. She is the Nairobi Global Center, which is a center which is a partnership between this our institution and Columbia on the Columbia University of New York South Cooperation Program. And she said she wants to talk about gender. You know, plotted here which question I'm going to ask her. But before, Madam, you talk about how she gets take up things in STEM and engineering, I would like you to tell us a little bit about today. It's like free advertisement time for you.
Professor De Silva. I come from the Columbia Global Center, Nairobi. We are part of Columbia University. We are part of a network with other centers in Mumbai. We have Amman, we have Sao Paulo. So 9 centers, and our mission is basically to engage in research, education, program interventions and partnerships in the regions where we are located to connect Columbia University to those regions. So we are a resource that that you can work with to collaborate on different kinds of projects, and the Microgrid Academy is one of the projects that we're working and collaborating on. We have other types of projects, and I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Now for the girls.
Yes. The question?
Yes.
How do we increase women and girls science and math? Goes down to the fact that right now, statistics, about 10% of science professionals in Africa are women, 50% are men. So how number? At the same time, research that has been done in many places, including in places like Asia, shows that girls as young as early, primary level, age of 6, are already doubting their ability to do math, their ability to do science. So it starts more that girls do math. This is driven by mostly socio-cultural perceptions. It is cultural perception in the right career for girls and boys, as well as expectations. It is also driven, perceived to be the right ones for women. It's an injury with not have merit. So about how some of in the West very successful in having women participate equally or even more than men in the STEMs. So what have they done? One thing we have to do is think about supporting the girls, including understanding the data, getting good data that tells us what is going on, what is causing girls not to perform well in science and math. That we need to career centering so that girls are able to see women that have succeeded in these careers. We need to think about most of in schools by men. The girls are not seeing women in these courses. We need to think about the teaching materials and how the different genders. So all these, I think, would be some of that can be put in place to encourage.
Great, thanks. Thanks very much. Me and Professor Okuri for together teaching in Makerere, and we were surprised to see that the first class girls in engineering were just knocking big time, are more shy, they read, they study. Meanwhile, the boys are fighting each other to go alphabet in the car, and so this happens. So it also need to take up the come now. Learn to go to the other side, to Columbia University, to Matt. Matt is South, and then my question to him is, what is fairly? What are the limitations? Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Professor, and thank you for NL and Res for Africa in this event. It's been my privilege to participate in the Academy and also to be a participant and learned a lot about energy in Africa and Kenya in the last couple of days. And today talking about smaller scale microgrid. There's a lot of interesting overlaps between the two, and I think the two can coexist in a very important way, particularly in the context of 10% rural electrification currently and 60% urban electrification. So there's room for everyone. For the side, a lot of similarities in the work. So regardless of large-scale PV projects or small-scale PV projects, opportunities for capacity building locally will have a positive effect in the development of these resources. So from my perspective as a professor in New York, who has limited influence on the events in Kenya. I would say that my contribution has been to participate in the Microgrid Academy, to foster North-South collaboration, particularly with young engineers. Focusing on engineers is you can put them on a path of cooperation and expand their boundaries, making connections from the US or from Europe with Kenyan engineers, and then for Kenyan engineers to cooperate and collaborate with people maybe they may not have met traditionally. So this fosters cooperation, it fosters entrepreneurialism and social, the exchange of ideas, some possible technical advantages or comparative advantage from one side to the other. I'm not saying it's necessarily a north-south exchange, it can be a south-north exchange equally, and I think it's important. The way we work in my classroom approach, multidisciplinary on the strategic planning and development of projects, thinking holistically about what you're trying to achieve, and thinking about you know, the beneficiary in the best terms of not capacity development, beneficiary in terms of human development. So I hope to bring my students along and start collaboration in the future. This is our first steps. And part of how we do this, the second part of my answer, is through projects. We use projects as laboratories. We've talked about laboratories already, so this is, you know, kind of repeating, but the importance of projects are as laboratories for learning is you learn through mistakes. Projects are complicated, they're hard. Building a microgrid in a rural community in Africa is not easy. If it were easy, we would not be having this conversation. So a lot about which can directly work for their training. Learn, and I think Natalia yesterday, about challenges with the capacity of the user and the ability to into the grid and productively. So now thinking about, these are technical challenges, but they're social in nature. At these, so in North, thank you.
Great. Now to show the team is arguably one of the top experts. Been published quite a lot, but he going to us because I tell you, we got government to discuss sometime 5 years back. So some to solve will take 25,000 primary. After and did more and found out of those systems were working. That's it. Because I think human factor is going to profit. Is there worship? Do they enjoy it? Do they see a and then to and even a bit of repair. It's to you. What are the impact of this one of our microgrid account?
Thank you very much, Professor. I just wanted this opportunity to be been involved in microgrid as well as this conference. So it's truly an honor to understand more what's going on here. I just want to make another comment that in the discussion over lunch about capacity building, I'm interested in, and it made me think of university. Years ago, we studied sustainable energy. Why? Because the students kept to us and saying we want to learn more about energy. So they really to do that. I am finishing the application for graduate, and again, it's driven by students who want more training. So I just encourage people here that want training opportunities. You need to speak up. You need to speak to people that you're working with. You need to speak to NGOs. You need to speak to government folks and express that, because that will be important. It will be a driver going forward. So I'll keep this brief. You have an envious task trying to manage a bunch of professors who talk in long periods of time. So let me just put this in context of sustainability. Often we talk about, or the three legs on the stool, mental, and there's social. I think we spend a lot of time on the environmental, economic project we want to roll out. We forget about the social piece. And the stool becomes tippy, right? A two-level of the leg is very unique. And I think it's impressive that there's a whole session here on capacity building, because I think it needs to be front and center. Your comments, Carlo, the importance of people were on. These systems will work because of, say we can bioenergy, we can solve the biology problems, and all policy and deploy operation. Remember that and work all pieces come together, then it won't function. State. You learn by you to take lessons from places failed program in New York City, tens of millions of dollars. It's clean burning coal and replace fuel oil. Sat in a wisdom and a program, put tens, rolled it out. Less than 25 has been met. Now there's multiple reasons. Two in particular that strike me. One, they didn't go and talk to people in the world and a policy structure and what kind of program would actually in the capital and work. It may work in the capital, but it doesn't work in Lee. Did not. The comment this morning, couldn't buy a car. The mechanic was 200 kilometers away. Yes. Unfortunately, it's not New York. You often, and if your system goes down in the middle of winter, you do not want to wait to come in. You know, those mistakes you as you go with renewable energy to remember the impacts around it. But people are the center of all these activities and are essential.
It's true. I could add 2 or 3 other stories, isn't it? Not. Now, take it you, sir. This is the gentleman from UN Habitat. He is passionate about people, about training. At UN Habitat has been doing in Kenya 10 years.
Professor Silva, I would like to thank of this conference. I think that this is really a world event. Just after 1 year, again, I can understand that the people is at the center of the development. Me, passionate about the rest of Africa. They are not just pushing for renewal of any project, the component. And that's why you what we call white elephant, big project that is not working to integrate the component. And just to say that I'm from UN Habitat. UN Habitat is United Nations agency that is interested sustainable urbanization. Work a lot in cities, also a lot in promoting housing infrastructure in cities. And the issue is that cities where 70% of energy are consumed, renewable energy, but most energy is consumed to cities. Alone, half of the total energy generated. Important as we are advocating for sustainable urbanization into the energy, are we, and we realize we are failing in it. A lot of the issue of that we are talking, we did not realize about renewable energy, but it needs to be also habit sustainable use of energy. Do we do? Have we been doing it 5 years? For example, one of the areas that is the building sector, and that the building sector, most of the buildings in, for example, Europe are designed for the consumer. Let's cite and also ability that focus on that the disenfranchisement of the society. 60% population young beyond those who are. When we look at them, we don't include decided all hands on renewable energy and energy efficiency for youth empowerment. The main, we want the concept of renewable, the concept of energy. This training, we train youth solar lantern to build solar street light from scratch. We also train them how to produce charcoal briquette so that earn the living from that. For the last 400 youths, several places, including Kenya, because we believe that we need to include the youth development program in Kenya, because Mandela education is the, if we want to have a future free from poverty, we need to educate people. And be associated with the Green Academy, because we be technician that fix solar panel, solar system. Now that we are able to put solar system in the advocating promotion, we need expert. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. you. And now, near Professor Makayo Kuri, him to answer a question. Professor Makayo Kuri works CREEE, there are three is there. East Africa Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. So that is the acronym. Eh? The other has not to say. Now, institution which sits across the board in Uganda, in the Microgrid Academy. I want to ask Professor, who is one of the founders, why and strategically mind.
Much, I would like to say that it's a privilege to physically demonstrate that the Center for Energy Efficiency endorses and fully supports the Microgrid Academy and looks forward to other initiatives from RES for Africa. Now, Monroe noticed that looking forward to addressing and the objectives of the East African Community Council established the East African Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, i.e. to strengthen and coordinate activities that will lead to transformation of renewable energy and energy initiatives which were occurring around the partner states, with a view to basically building a vibrant business and market center in this field. It also will add value through cooperation, and it will be more effective. Now, its capacity of the 5 main activities of the center, including policy harmonization in the area such as governance, regulation, as well as standardization, knowledge management, awareness raising, business investment. My colleague will be talking, will be adding on to this part of the investment, as well as promotion. So we see the Microgrid Academy in the form it's being undertaken as creating a of scale. And it will lead eventually to creating a competitive, sustainable. Thank you. I'll try to. Typically, we see that through EACRI's involvement, we will ensure wider stakeholder participation in planning. Stay with the graduates. They will want to RES for Africa and the MGA to look forward to our support and to knock on the door of EACRI anytime.
Thank you.
If nobody responds, I will respond.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you so much. So now the next one speaker is Alice, and I have to make a small confession here. I worked with GIZ since 1998, which is last century. You know, and David was yes. In Uganda, I for the German taxpayers supporting me a lot, and now I have Italian taxpayers, isn't it? All right, and the private. Alice is has an advisory, and she is a very hard-line girl. She always asks me, what is the impact? So I'm asking her relationship that she sees the training that we are giving them changes, because unless somebody is making money, things are not okay. So, Alice.
Thank you, Prof. In 1998, I was existing.
Is it?
Yes, at the university.
Wow.
I think for me, I would say African saying that says, tie your donkey. Tie your donkey. Tie your donkey. You already have, hold on to them, do not lose them. Breath, I think that very much in line with this friend. From the project I work on, promotion of solar hybrid mini grids in Kenya. And our experience is more from supporting the government to put in place policies that make it possible for rural grid areas. Systems. I think this morning discussions about huge systems, but this is where the huge systems will stand in years. I also from capacity quite close to Strathmore University. I think I'm very excited because we have a collaboration with seeing fruit in the collaboration that Strathmore University has with the ISR. And of the microgrid have been back and forth in discussing the best way to give us comments on what we are thinking, what is your experience, what has worked, what challenges face that the microgrid academy should avoid, and what the microgrid academy should pick up on. So for me, I'm also excited that this is actually coming to happen. It's coming to fruition. Your question was lessons learned. Okay.
Few seconds.
Okay. The experience has been what we have worked quite with the private sector. Policy requires engagement with the sector. So some of the sector has been experiencing cuts across the topics that the Microgrid Academy is going to be picking up. But even after I leave the Microgrid Academy, I think from me would be to urge the private sector make use of those skills, one, and two, improve on the curriculum that is going to be used in that system. Take up the students and at the same time contribute to the development of the curriculum, contribute to the implementation of that curriculum, because you benefit directly from it in terms of the human capacity that you recruit.
Thank you. Merci. Thank you very much. So Francesca is on and he also explained the use about what capacity in this in terms of renewable.
So thank you, here, and we are really grateful to the Microgrid Academy. We have learned from the different presentations that a very complex issue that entails the actors. Here we have the developers, the public society, the communities. So we focus on the communities. Communities of how they enjoy brought by energy. First of all, they have never need to know how and by using it and how to use it in the devices. But energy, people often don't know it, don't know how to use it. For that is where an opportunity of using electricity can develop and be coming with the with companies established in different areas. There's some colleagues here, and with the begin where it was basically developing demand community, developing community itself. So we see as our beneficiaries, but the company as a client, in the end, we have the same aim. So develop the people to use productively electricity, benefiting from the items they can use, like refrigerators to keep their food, like processing of agricultural products to basically increase their diet and also their income and so on. So this is a very important kind of capacity building that we are doing with the community, and together with the academy we are also bringing the capacity, building the capacity of the technicians. Just one last thing I want to say is that not all the gaps are the same, and not all the capacity can be filled in the same way. There's areas where access to energy is more difficult and private sector might not reach there, and in such cases we need to be intellectually honest and also understand which solutions we can bring. Sometimes there's only the intervention of the public sector and NGOs that can be brought there in terms of building the capacity of the community to prepare it to receive energy. In some other cases, instead, it's places that are ready for the private sector, but it's very important to address it together as a multi-stakeholder, with a multi-stakeholder approach.
Merci. Thank you very much. I want to give the last word to Professor. Him is power. First, 30 plus people here, academy. How do you know they are happy?
And we have all with us. And we have been working on productive energy. We don't like just light. Decided just a little commitment to go on the end because light is efficient. We want to give an answer to that needs skilled people, to the NGOs who need skilled people. We want to give an answer to the people in the plants, in the communities, and the people in the universities. They want to know more. Now the question is, did they enjoy this week just to start the Microgrid Academy or not? I will ask it to all of you, and I want to make a little survey. After this half an hour, you understood what it was, the starting of Microgrid Academy. So, like ancient Roman, you can make just stop, or just yes. If you want our if we got, he gave me a duty, a homework. I want to know if the class, the classroom, the people coming from Tanzania, from Kenya, the people from UN, from companies, from NGO, if they like or not. Just a little survey. Okay. So, are you ready? Stand up. Stand up. Also the teachers. Also the teachers. Also the teacher. So, if you... So I will ask you, okay, do you want microgrid making a move? Just stop. You say stop. You will say yes. So, microgrid move. Yes. Microgrid. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you for our panel. Word that I'm that nice session. Thank you so much, Dr. Meeting that panel. Now we have one, but in between. Yes, but in between we position paper by Anna, who is the head of regulatory affairs in Saharan Africa, Asia at NL Group. And this is a request to panelists for the next session. If you could stick to the time that you stated, when we have very long statistics from the current session that here, just a few lyrics to go outside or open us for. So can you just take two and for. So later now to Paula, who is Asia and GP.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today about people who differ centralized and decentralized model refer mainly to centralized generating facilities whose location is decided BT and the grid availability are connected to the main grid. On the other hand, decentralized facilities are generally related to technologies that generate electricity exactly where the customer is. So they are located nearby or the done on the full cost. Thanks to the experience in the past years, the facilities have become a reliable and efficient that is in some cases even more technically and financially feasible. And these are used to provide air unreached or in areas where supply is. So when we generally refer to basically is located near industrial cluster and provide energy through pipe. And mini-grid solution provide energy to an area, generally low density, and in these cases, in many cases, area are not electrified. In order to implement of this both solution anyway, work is fundamental. As far as concern the single user hybrid solutions, aspect needs to be emphasized. First of all, it's important to the eligible customer, those customers who are allowed to sign bilateral PPAs with an IPP and choose an alternative provider of supplier. Also, it's important to set up a simplified licensing requirement for the IPPs. In many cases, just a generation license is enough and a distribution license is not needed. Besides, it's important to allow the IPP to have flexibility in terms of tariff setting and also in, considering net metering rules, where basically the customer or the IPP is allowed to, to inject in the grid the excess of energy at remunerated tariff. Other tax incentive like import duty exemption or VAT reduction are also further elements to support this kind of development. Relating to mini-grid development, instead, the aspect is even more complex. First of all, we need to highlight that using mini-grid to provide energy to remote areas is no more a charity activity. This has become an economical activity where the private sector has regulatory framework in place, allows charities and put have highlighted groups of elements that must have in place in order to ensure to obtain field. First of all, simplify the permitting process and for the test line and to be filled the right ways, environmentally assessed, has to be started through a single window in order to authority to easily complete documentation, test them in a reasonable time. In addition, a combined execution as guarantee operator, ensuring inclusivity of supply at least for a certain period of time in order to allow the investors to avoid re-operate with another important tariff setting to be applied to the mini-grid cannot be compared with customer applied to grid. Tariff has to be considered, first of all, and tariff the customer to be based on their willingness and ability to pay. On the other hand, has to ensure a reasonable return for the investor, to take cost, inclusion, and the or return. Of course, owners can allow the reduction of by providing grants that would reduce upfront cost and allow the application of a lower. Another element that is the most to the grid of the is here is mini grid. This can be mitigated by the divulgation by the government of expansion plan with indication of what will be the idea, and this plan has to be, of course, this is not enough. A safer operation for it's important that the regulation would include clear and defined exit option. The exit option can consider an alternative for the mini-grid operator to choose between becoming a small power producer connected to the main grid and selling energy at remunerated and feed-in tariff to the grid, or becoming a distributor network operator, buying and selling energy, buying from the main grid and selling to the main grid. And another option will be a combination of two. But what is the most important aspect is related to the compensation for the network asset. The network asset is the most expensive portion of the investment in the main grid. So as far as this is being built according to the technical and safety standard required for an interconnection for the main grid, the distributor network operator arriving in the main area has to buy, should be obligated to buy the mini grid, the asset, the distribution asset, and pay a compensation value that has to be based on what was the expected that decided to make this investment. Of course, it's important, the role is in ensuring, as in this case, the best solution for all involved, communities first, mini grid operator, and the main grid. I would like to conclude by saying that electrification in the economy is crucial, and sustainable and decentralized solutions represent today the most efficient instrument to access to electricity. A productive use of energies is essential for this virtuous cycle of being on an inclusive, having an holistic approach and a partnership will be important to the most sustainable business model that is for community and investors. And finally, of course, a systematic know-how dissemination, a consistent regulatory framework, and an are crucial in order to ensure an effective energy policy for emerging economies. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I would now like to call a panel. Sorry about that. I would now like to call on the next panel. That is going to be our final panel for the day. And I know that some of us have been patient almost all day, despite our panels going longer than they don't have. So our final panel is moderated by Valentino Rossi, who is the head of development at NL Green Power. He's going to be the keynote speaker and also the roundtable moderator. And the topic that we're looking at this time is connect investors in renewable energy markets. I just want on the discussants to, right after Mr. Valentino Rossi's presentation, he can just continue with the conversation. So let me just do that real fast. Mr. Isaac Kiva, who is the Secretary, Renewable Energy, Ministry of Energy and Petroleum in Kenya. A round of applause for him. John Omenge, who is the Secretary, Geo-Exploration, Ministry of Energy and Petroleum. Okay. And we have David Kariuki, a senior economist at the ERC, or Energy Regulatory Commission in Kenya. A round of applause for him. Beatrice Meso, who is the company secretary and general manager corporate affairs at Kenya Power and Lighting Company, Kenya. We also have Stanley Kamau, the head of Public-Private Partnership Unit at the National Treasury in Kenya. A round of applause. And finally, we have Lee Smith, who is the project manager at RENA Consulting. So as I mentioned earlier, we'll have the keynote from Valentino Rossi, the head of business development at EGP, and then we can have the conversation right after. Thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. So I will go through a very quick presentation, 10 minutes maximum, about our experience as Enel Green Power with auctions. So I ask our distinguished panelists to bear with me for 10 minutes, and then we'll get into our panel where we'll debate these issues more thoroughly. So again, I'm the head of business development for Enel Green Power. I have here a very quick introduction of what Enel Green Power is. We are today the largest, worldwide largest operator and developer of renewables. I mentioned already some figures this morning also during the press conference. We own and operate about 40 gigawatts of capacity. This is 2016 number, so the updated number for 17 is 40 gigawatt. And we develop about 2.6 gigawatt of additional capacity every year. So every year we build, and we develop and build and finance and put into operation 2.6, 2.7 gigawatt of new capacity. So that makes us the biggest developer and operator in the world. We are differentiated across technologies. We have all renewable technologies, even the most exotic ones like geothermal, which is very familiar here in Kenya. So we're in hydro, solar, wind, and geothermal, large and small hydro, and we are differentiated in terms of geographies. So we typically are quite mentioned in the headlines because we are active in most of the countries which are today adopting, embracing renewable energies. You see here some of our recent achievements. I don't want to go through them. It's just worth mentioning that we are very active across the world, in all the continents, with developments in different stages. So we go from projects being awarded in recent tenders, like the Mexican one, the Peruvian one, the Argentinian one, to projects being developed for the long term. And we are developing this kind of projects in, for example, in some geographies in Africa. Africa is a top priority for us. It might be evident why, but what we always tell is that we started from Europe when the renewable wave was very strong in Europe, so back, I would say, 10 years ago. Then we expanded into Latin America to surf that wave. Now we're seeing that some geographies in Latin America are in a way slowing down in terms of renewable growth, and we're moving to Africa since some years, and Asia, which are the I would say the hottest areas to be in renewables for the next future. So you see here on the map some of the activities that we have in Africa. We are active in Morocco and in Algeria, Tunisia. So we might be different stages. So it might mean that we have won a tender or that we are developing projects. The point here is that we are active in market in Africa. We have awarded a solar tender in Ethiopia, one in Zambia. We're operator of renewable operator in South Africa. For the several we keep investing screen markets in Africa, and of course Kenya. We have been opening an office a couple of years ago, and we're developing projects in the country. Quickly through this market overview. You can appreciate the evolution of markets from 2010 to 2017, and this is something we will also debate with our panelists. Basically, there is I would say, a repeating history in all the new markets opening up. So most of them start with feed-in tariffs or market-based type of incentives, and then they move to different and more competitive, more mature systems, and typically they go to auctions. And again, auctions will be the topic of the day for this panel. And you see in the on the right hand of the slide with the small hammers, these are all the countries, all the markets which today are adopting auction systems, and many more are joining the frenzy, so to speak. So many more will be joining this large group of countries. So auctions are typically the way to source renewables in all the markets, and they might take different shapes, different forms, so we'll discuss them today during the panel. The evident and nice results of auctions, and I think this will be something that most regulators and policymakers would like, is that they are driving the price of renewable energy down. Of course, this is the most evident factor. It is always the case, however, it should not be the case. There are different ways to design auctions that might maximize other objectives. So we'll discuss during the panel how governments can use auctions to fulfill different objectives. For sure, prices have been going down very rapidly over the last 5-10 years, and you see here some of the most notable ones in areas where we are familiar with these numbers. You see, which is driven by two. The first one is the underlying technology, both in wind and even more so in are becoming more complex when it comes to the cost of the investment, what installed, and this is of course a trend which will continue, and this drives the down. So these two effects combined in the slide before. I want to give you from one here that we participate. It is our point of view. It is something that we in open, well-designed auctions, and I think that this represents an important insight for investors. And most investors, some of the criteria that possible. We are pro-competition. We like to be in competitive situations. Sometimes we don't win the way is run, and we like auctions. They make sure that the governments are sourcing whatever they might make energy, and they also will satisfy the investors like us who will be investing money. What are some of the criteria they like national and decide? And one which are very predictable, non-national, in a way the ambitions of the country, renewables, and the steps that the country wants to take in order to get to that objective. So we typically don't like the objectives which state I want to have, I don't know, 50 gigawatts in 2050. Aspiration lives to be implemented annual, semi-annual tenders that give constant to the investors like us that there will be tenders, there will be capacity being awarded in sufficient quantities to make that country an important country when it comes to our presence. The second criteria is that we want the tender to be structured around a transparent and clear process. So everything has to be defined up front so we can decide whether we want to engage or not, and we know what we will have to expect from the tender. So rules can be designed whatever way, but they have to be known beforehand, and so we can decide if we want to be in or not be in. And then this clear process has to be, there must be data, and again we'll discuss this. So they're structured in two phases as very clear and stringently. The projects are being careful, and only the ones which will be crucial on legal issues, bankability issues will be then phase, which is designed to maximize the most, and these will, which are awarded to actually come through real projects, real to the grid. Tenders, conditions for bankability. So we like standard PPAs. So of the PPAs, so the project will again. This is when it comes to local content. There are most jurisdictions designing this around 10. Again, whatever that means, involvement of communities, it might be sourcing locally manufactured equipment, it might be state participation of law. We like because that will bring about social and economic in the countries, but if I deter hamper risks and the prices, I will, for example, those which are on auction has been it's very nice practices that are also not working. So it gives South Africa is a very case paper for this, but basically South Africa have been capacity and have been attracting dollars of investments through a structure of rounds or round from 2011. We have been part of this. We have been awarded some megawatts. Nice point. South Africa also, so to speak, in the last 10 because certain conditions changed. Maybe discuss in the panel. Zambia decided for the Scaling Solar program, which is a standard 5S. It's a program which is a package that the country just receives, which defines all the rules, all the steps to be followed in order to launch such a process. Of course, it is something that, given the sponsorship of IFC, given the transparency and clarity of the rules, most foreign investors like us like, and we've been successful in Zambia by being awarded a 34 megawatt PV project. Ethiopia is another case where we participated. Ethiopia decided to go for a locally run, so not scaling solar, locally run type of auction, which was, we believe, very carefully designed. Again, I say this not just because we've been awarded this tender, but we truly believe that it's been properly designed and has given great results to Ethiopia. It's interesting that Ethiopia will continue on this path of locally designed and managed tenders, but will also move into the scaling solar program from IFC in order to accelerate the speed. Finally, something that is very important to us, all the attention of this type of forums when auctions are being discussed is focused on how you design auctions, how you make sure that auctions are properly run, they are competitive, they source the energy at the lowest price. But remember that what we want as investors and what countries want as countries is that those projects become reality. So again, they become electrons being fed to the grid and then power being distributed to the final users. So it is important to mention that between awarding and what we call COD, there is at least 1 to 2 years depending on technology. And there are very important steps to be accomplished. So it is important, and again, this is something we'll discuss, that everything is set up in a way that the process is smooth, also from awarding to COD, for example, by enabling a full permitting to be reached, by enabling engagement of local communities not to oppose the project, to reach commercial close on time and according to the conditions that were defined in the bid, and to reach also financial close. So this is very important. It is something that is oftentimes overlooked. It is very important for us because it is, in a way, the most important step that will bring the projects to reality. So with this, I finish my short presentation, and I will open the panel. So I will join my panelists up here.
Hello.
So, okay, I'll give you this and maybe, okay, I will start with Mr. Pino, so I will start with you, so I will give it to you. Okay, so, can you hear me? Okay. So we bring here today to our panel a very different set of perspectives. And I think I've been quite clear as a private investor in declaring that we favor auctions. And again, auctions can be designed in many different ways. So each country, each government can find its proper way of running auctions. So my first question would be for Mr. Kiva. And the question would be around the present system that Kenya has, which is the feed-in tariff, and potential evolution that you see in the system. We all know that you have about 3 gigawatts of projects in the renewable pipeline here, but the actual speed of execution being quite slow. So do you see any evolution, any natural evolution in the system? What is your idea about this?
Thank you, Moderator. I would say we started with feed-in tariff policy in the year 2008. The idea was to be able to quickly bring on board private sector players in the energy sector generation. And when we started, we actually started with a few technologies. We started with the small hydro, we started with biomass and wind. And then in the year 2010, we added solar to the feed-in tariff policy. And up to now, we have the substantial, not as much as we had wanted, because we have not gotten all the projects executed within the time we thought they would. But at least we have some which have been able to undertake their studies and reach PPA stage. Some are even feeding to the national grid. We have several who have been able to establish PPAs which are fully approved, and they are now in the construction phase. But a number of them, majority of them, as in the phase of finalizing feasibility study so they can be able to go forward. For us, it has been a good sign because first we wanted to get investors into the market, and we have also been able to look at our frameworks, look at our investment policies in regards to attracting the private sector players, and been able to do a number of activities together with the other government agencies. And now where we are, we reached a point where we thought we need to change into another system, and the system we have been able to identify is actually the energy auctions, which we intend to move into. And the reason for that is that we feel that if we do energy auction, it is going to help us to be able to do power planning much better. Because with feed-in tariff policy, it is like first in, first come, and when people come, we give them an approval, then they go ahead to do their feasibility studies. Some will keep to the timelines, others will go outside the timelines. So we think energy auction will be able to clearly our power plant capacity, and then the other reason, competitiveness. We have seen the figures, we have heard what is happening around. I think there is competitiveness and be able to lower the direction we are moving.
Okay, thank you. Our evolution that you're going to discuss how auctions could put one of these solutions. I want Mr. Kelly is from a legislative point of view that how many of renewables of those famous megawatts of the pipeline.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, moderator. Is solving energy market, and when we started to put it, investors come system. There's in our sector because much have wished. Now we have a long list of investors that have shown interest, and particularly after 2013. And we are actually very happy to see that the measures we have put in place through the years reviews policy have actually attracted investors. However, we still feel that we want the investors that come on board complete projects fast doing now, and it's helpful to us, particularly those of us who are doing planning, because we want to be confident when an investor shows interest, he actually completes what he has shown interest in. That assists us to have a stable plan and as capacity to lead it. We are predicting that there could be bottlenecks that are making projects completion longer than I've wished. And just to highlight a few, some of them are, of course, call. We have a situation where investors have shown interest in certain things, but for one or the technology they have adopted. Right? One of the projects, it was developed up to a level that we thought is complete, but we could not be able to get the output of capacity that we required because adequate studies had not been done on the viability of that technology. So one of the things, of course, would be that we need to bring on board investors who have not only technical competence, but also have experiences with the technology they want to apply, so that you don't have projects where a lot of money is sunk and they eventually fail. The other one, of course, is the usual challenges that revolve around financial close. So there are lots of investors that show a lot of enthusiasm, even have pre-investment finances, but when it comes to actual development of the project, they are unable to get to financial close. And we are looking at some of the reasons that this does not happen. And so working together with them, some of these issues revolve around the bankability of their own proposals. Others revolve around the challenges that are there in the regulatory framework, which we are trying to address. And others simply are weaknesses with the investors themselves. So the idea is that going forward, and particularly when we go to the auction process, you want to focus on investors that have or are likely to get to financial close faster, which eventually, of course, means that the process is also done faster. The other one, of course, as a bottleneck is, so the issue of reaching financial close also sometimes revolves around quality, the proposals. So you want proposals that are of a much higher quality than the ones that we've had. So out of the almost 300 projects that we do have in our pipeline, there might be some that are not as technically or as well done in terms of the quality of the feasibilities as we would want to. And because of it, when they get to discuss with potential financiers, you find lots of weaknesses. And this delays the projects. Now, and then, of course, there are those projects that are facing difficulties in meeting conditions precedent. Some of the conditions precedent are not met because not a lot of due diligence done at the beginning of the project. You know, the conditions precedent involve such issues as that, for example, the land that you are going to use for the project has been dealt with in terms of ownership and those people who are likely, particularly for land that is leased. So you find out that the land may potentially be available, but you have not fully discussed the issues revolving around acquisition of that land with the investors. And I'm sure some of you already know that we've had projects that have failed because there were issues revolving around the land acquisition. And then there is other issues like the ESIA concerns, particularly the S part, the social part. So you find out that some projects are done with the ESIA reports and approvals that have not been fully, that have not been reached into a level of adequate consensus, particularly among the investors that, or among the people that would be affected around the project. And so you eventually end up with situations where there is a lot of resistance once you have reached to the point, for example, where you want to construct. And because of it, they are not completed in good time. So, and then there is sometimes the difficulties that we have around our own approval systems. This is for public institution approvals. So you get that some of them take a little longer and end up delaying this project. So those are some of the bottlenecks that we have been encountering in ensuring that these projects are completed or reach the CODs as early as possible. And we are, of course, addressing them in various ways. Among them is institutional collaboration, that is particularly among the approving institutions. Ensuring, for example, that there is adequate collaboration between even national government and county governments, the ones that have to provide land, among others. Thank you very much.
Okay, to your point, one of the experiences that we have had around the world is that when you have several agencies / departments or different ministries dealing with project authorization, which might give the problem that you correctly mentioned, you know, the institution of a unique agency which manages the entire permitting / approval process might be beneficial, because that, of course, will will accelerate and align all the process. Just an idea. So before we move to the auctions, which is the topic of today, I want to explore again with Mrs. Miso some of the bottlenecks that you face today with the present system in Kenya. So you're in charge of corporate affairs at KPLC. And of course, the incumbent has, depending on how the system is designed, has an important role. Depending, again, on how you design the system, might be the off-taker of the energy, might have to integrate the renewable sources into the grid, into the system, might have a favorable or unfavorable position. So how do you see the system and how it is designed today? Is it conducive to the development, and what further modification improvements you will do? You will go to auctions or anything else?
Thank you, Director. Yeah, in Kenya, the legal framework, the energy law, let me say, is evolving. We are currently doing a reform on the law to realign ourselves to maintain constitution and also other emerging practices around the world, areas of distribution and we all know the current energy law is 2006 law, and a lot has since, including the promulgation of the Constitution. So where are we in the legal and regulatory framework? Can we, how ready are we to accommodate energy? Basically, our legal framework is the energy law is so much on, and whatever we can do to drive down the tariff will be including the auction. So how enabling is the law today? The current law actually mandates the regulator, and Mr. Karaoke is there, to, when consider the energy contracts, sure that give a tariff which leaves the person who has been given license to the power, the person who has been given license generator are to be left financial integrity. They have enough to be able, should be sustainable, able to provide, to make this licensee have financial integrity. So the tariff is on that. That's why I'm saying if the auction, if the energy auction can help us address this area of tariff, it will be very welcome. So where are we on this? In the current law, the minister, the cabinet secretary in charge of energy is mandated to issue policies that will enable energy, renewable energy, that will promote renewable energy. And these policies could include energy auction. Again, that is a mandate that is given either in the have regulations made to the law to enable the cabinet secretary bring in policies that allow, will promote practices such as energy auction. Did the current feed-in tariff policy, which Engineer Kiba alluded to, which came in force for the first time in 2008, was just one of the ways to respond to how renewable energy can be promoted and how, in effect, tariffs can be driven down. Now, as I said, the energy law is undergoing reform. Currently, there is a bill before Parliament. Before we wait for elections last August, the bill had gone all the way to the president for amendment, but went back, and now it have to be retabled in Parliament. This bill also has promotion of renewables and in fact all institution which is supposed to set up to look after renewables. So having that, this will accommodate, this is able to accommodate the energy auction. So overall, I look at the Kenyan law, the proposed and the existing, the whole auction, they only need to be tweaked a little to make specific provisions. Otherwise, there is, I should say, enough. If Kenya decides to go energy auction way, it will not be a big task. All it takes is the willingness of the government and the players. Thank you.
Okay, so consensus. There is a consensus in the panel and taking steps towards auctions, and this, as an investor, is something that we are pleased to see. Again, we've seen very positive experiences in other African countries, and we very see this. So moving on, topic of auctions. The paper which is being presented here today identifies some of the key benefits of auctions, namely the credibility that an auction system brings and therefore the attractiveness for international investors, financeability, which is of course a key parameter for any investor, the competition that auctions can stimulate and therefore the economic benefit that this system can bring to the countries, and finally social and economical benefits. As I highlighted in my presentation, depending on how auctions are designed, they can bring a different degree of social and economical benefits to the countries. My two questions would be for Mr. Kiva, whether you agree on this four, let's say, advantages of auctions, or you see any other. We'll later comment on also some of the disadvantages of auctions, don't worry. And for you, Mr. Kamau, so where you, how would you elaborate on financeability, bankability? How do you see auctions designed in order to limit, avoid some of the risk that certain type of markets will entail, such as currency risk and in general bankability risks? Please.
Thank you very much. I think first of all, we need to ask ourselves the question why we need the private sector to invest. It's so important. First of all, the government has made a decision that areas like generation of power, they are going to be by the private sector, not by the government. That means in terms of power, it means government want to finance most of the generation of power of it. Sustainability issues would want to finance those activities through of it. Therefore, your partnering with the government is very critical. It's not by choice. We need each other. The private sector needs government. The government needs private sector as much as they. So I think that's one of the things we appreciate. And it's not a question of private sector being down or government being down. It's a question of sitting on the table and discussing these issues. Now, I think over the last few years, we have been dealing with what you call a government letter of support. And I think that capability. I already mentioned that government want to finance transactions of transit. So what I mean? The government of Kenya, at the moment, maybe in the future it will, is not prepared to issue sovereign guarantee. I think that's one of the things we need to appreciate. So as we design bankability of projects, first of all, that maybe South Africa, where they issued sovereign guarantees. In Kenya, we have been issuing sovereign guarantees. But I think we need to have that leadership, that you understand the reason why we do those sovereign guarantees. Now, for this country, I think the issues on convertibility, and I think the energy sector has been very lucky. For one reason, because most of the tariffs is in US dollars. If we went to Kenya sharing tariffs, then you would have a challenge of saying forex issues, Kenya sharing is depreciating, things like that. But you don't have an issue. Currently, all contracts are signed in US dollars. And there has been some discussions with the energy sector. How do we then encourage local participants within this smaller renewable, perhaps get Kenya sharing tariffs, so that we can deepen the market as well. We want to deepen the Kenya local market, domestic market. Perhaps those are issues that we need to deal with. But making to us as a national, from where we sit from national, we get the price. That's one of the things we want to have. Best price is going to pass the economy, so that you get jobs, you create whatever it takes. Price is important. Alone means nothing. It is actually how you share the risks that the price is determined. Because, for instance, if we had to issue a guarantee, it would be getting right reward because risks are minimized. If we ask, because right now we have issues to do with RAD, most of the renewable energy, the investors are responsible for obtaining RAD, getting resources, managing community issues, managing social issues. That's the way we have designed this program. But possibly if we move away and say, okay, we get away from these issues, the price would be different, because we are not managing community issues and social issues on the ground. So that price we are talking about, so we can't say we are comparing a price in Kenya and whatever, unless you have that risk matrix and looking at the issues on who takes what risk. It is what is most important. Yeah? So I think to us, the auction is very important. Why is that important? Because we want a fair way of getting investors. It should be fair, and everybody should be given a chance to participate. So what does that mean? It does not, we are not only looking at the investors in the energy sector, we are looking at investors in other sectors. And these radars and everybody else are the same people. So if you don't behave well in the energy sector, I'm not saying that we are not behaving, I'm saying if you don't have fairness, and that fairness can be done through an auction system. So if you create that fairness, people will feel more incentivized to even invest in other sectors. Now, when it comes to like the bankability of some of these projects, because we have been discussing issues like political risk, for instance, and the letter of support that we have been issuing basically is about to cover some certain political risks. I think there has been a lot of discussions on that letter between the government and some of the investors and the readers. And basically we have kind of reached a compromise. When we issued this letter before, I didn't know that a word like whatsoever arising can mean anything. It's only my lawyer here and other lawyers who told me now, you know that means everything and nothing. But what we have seen in the lessons that we have run previously is that a word like that in a document can mean everything, and it can be very challenging when you come to issues, some of the issues to resolve. So much as we look at the bankability and attracting investors, from where we sit at the National Treasury, we are also looking at managing those physical risks and also managing contingent liabilities. Because all these projects have contingent liabilities. And I think one of the questions that have arisen recently is about termination. KPLC has signed all these PPAs, or the possibly maybe it will sign maybe in the next 5 years, or the about $5 billion US. Suppose all those contracts are terminated one day. How would KPLC pay you? How do we deal with issues of managing contingent liabilities, and more specifically issues of termination? Because this is what most investors are very worried about. How, okay, you are saying you have put this provision, but where is the money? Because saying you will pay me is good enough. But what mechanism do you have to ensure that actually when it happens, you will be able to get the money and pay me? So these are issues that we have to address. And until we address those very basic issues, and those underlying issues, to make sure that everybody is comfortable, I think bankability can be very expensive. But because we have, and KPC has been the taker, because most investors have the credit risk of KPC, I think it has been for us. And I think moving forward, we believe that KPC is going to be managed. And the questions investors keep asking, can you in this letter report assure us KPC will continue to be credible? Now, I think KPC is supposed to be dependent. How does it dependent and then we tell them? So that we move and we have certain provisions, but I believe moving forward as we these are the provisions that we need to put in standardized documents as we go forward. You know, we have for a long time manage this and regulate this through making sure that we have documents provide those provisions, those areas where we had changes before. So and I believe moving that way we can actually move very fast. So but that's mean that it has not been, it has helped us to balance, unless you are in the days. So grant a lot of lessons. Very good lessons.
Before let me to mention your it is true that you can compare tariffs across tenders, same country, across time, loan across markets. The fundamental issue is restriction. You might see that, for example, as an example, we have bid $17 in the wind in Mexico. What is the difference from $20 Morocco? So you really compare it. So true. So Mr. Kiva, can you do you agree on those advantages the paper highlights comes to us, or you see other ones?
We agree that advantages to action. We have said we also did our and we think moving from bidding tariff action, what David said, that some of confidence that are planning to come at the time that you have been able to agree. Because you said the document secretariat they are supposed to evaluate and you agree together. Some of the judgments you may have a bid bond, some others don't have a bid bond, but there are ways to be able to determine who is serious, who is able to for the state. We agree with that. Of course, also regarding the issue about competitive, we have even seen it even now with the entire policy, where we view tariff from 1 year ago to do because we are preparing to change. But even now we are seeing investors coming back, they revise the financial model because the prices have down. Because now our standard letter of support is the question path is clear, and they are able to give us even reduced tariffs. It's very good for us, and we think going forward, if they make up, we now say get to know even when advance, and going to be able to get good which is suitable to the country is. And also going forward, if we are going to do energy to put into it as an element of local content. So doing a local content in Kenya, and also be able to have the Kenyan people participate, and that also de-risks some of the which you could, because you have local content, then you are able to deal with some issues, and you are able to get also ownership. There is advantages to go in energy auction as can be able to set one. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there is a so to speak, the timer will show 10 minutes and now 2 minutes. It's a nice way to accelerate. So, Smith is an expert at different ways governments in Africa have been running. Can you give us a sense on what you've been working in South Africa, and also these of auction systems live there, for example? Yeah, thanks.
Almost all of the positives that you see on PPP Africa and equal that we've seen. By means just to a different doesn't necessarily mean it's happy days and everything will move ahead smoothly. Some of the key negatives is you open an auction and constraint, it becomes a drive to the lowest price possible. And what can lead to is the removal of small and local developers from the market. And as we see in Africa, guys like the market, guys, although sales can be pulling out initially. There's only the really guys. Developers try aggressively on, the developers side no longer exist. So that element of the market is gone now. The thing is, without targeting specific regions, you just drive for price. Naturally, what is the product go to specific in a country. South Africa, for example, most of the wind is in one particular area. Solar is in what we call the solar corridor from Cape. And that Cape is the popular area in our country. Fantastic. We've built hundreds of megawatts of plants, a place where no lives need for electricity. We exported 100 kilometers a day over transport networks. Thought about it differently and decided it's plants developed need it, then we the loss. The thing with that is all plants get in one particular area, and there are rules on the local development and community population. I think there was something about like 50-kilometer radius or something is we had to use your money. So all those are very honoraries and things, but what the rest of the country that didn't get renewables projects, they got nothing. So one thing that you can do to solve that is instead of again just allowing a countrywide open market, constrain areas and perhaps use different areas to target the specific of, and perhaps everybody to contribute to the communities immediately within the vicinity of their projects. Is some central fund set up that benefits everybody. Should go to skills creation, internships, like things like that. It benefits in the market. Something else that with solving the problems in South Africa on the back of this real dark bottom, we're increasing quite quickly content requirements. Essentially meant the way to content requirements was to manufacture a country. So we had about modular set up shop in Africa, we're manufacturing. They're all now shut all over the complete disaster. That shouldn't have happened. Likewise, we see training facilities for world-class wind turbine technicians. There are people now that have just qualified. There was a girl that walked into my office last week. She can't get employed because there are so many wind farms, and they started now followed what she wanted to do. She went through the program. Now she needs to change her career because we're going to see a new wind farm. Even if the new round of projects close in the first quarter of this year, they won't be constructed for another 18 months at least. So what's she going to do for the next 18 months? Personally, we had I think at one point we were going to build a manufacturing plant for blades through LM. Also didn't actually build a tower manufacturing start of Cape again. That's not dormant. Everybody's been laid off. They can't do anything else. The key message from this is make sure that in an program, it isn't just a drive to the cheapest price and all the it's because players in the that can achieve those things but to achieve it really. So you have big sponsors and EPC companies around the world that can go into the market and go to the floor price and beat everyone else because they want to dominate the world and they'll do it. So to be able to set mechanisms that allow you to actually reject. Interesting, recently there was 10 where the lowest was actually rejected. So building mechanisms that allow you to apply some common sense to develop strategies of what you're trying to achieve, they are sustainable. Because around now, the REI has been 2 years to close. Not everybody comes around for that. Really, an abundant commitment to your to bring in the development, commit to capacity development, all those things, while there are delays in this process. So instead of going for big capacity targets that are aggressive and you want the lower price and minimum local content and all these things, make sure that everything's sustainable and up over a number of years to make sure that it will carry on beyond just this one hour with attention, but it doesn't actually achieve.
Okay, thank you very much. So I would like to thank our panelists for their interest for discussion on auctions and of course private investors. We are over to the next auction rounds for renewables in Kenya. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, and thanks to the panelists as well. Great insight, and I hope that those of us into Impactive in Kenya are able to have something from this panel we've had this session. Now, our next and two speakers of the evening, I'm going to have to request that taking up 10 minutes, let's do 5 minutes each, because would like to shut down for today. So our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, without wasting much time, I hope I pronounced his name right, who is the Executive Director for Global Energy Strategy and Natural Power Systems. And he's going to be telling us about key elements for smooth hybridization of existing mini and close for him. And the panelists who just spoke the last 40 minutes, kindly we're requesting that you go have a photo op just outside the entrance. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay. Apologies for the time. I'll try not to be heated. So I'll try to 10 minutes as required. With electric power systems, we are testing storage and power electronics. However, we don't deploy, we don't sell per se, but in particular in emerging markets, we deploy on a turnkey basis within power generation systems. So we are not trying to deploy on a turnkey basis renewable energy sources backed by storage, working seamlessly with conventional generators in order to power 24/7. We have a history of over 10 years, but big part of that has been research and development. Been in the market for 3 years, a bit more than years, and during those 3 years, we have deployed hybrid storage systems across 5 continents, and particularly in Africa, we have systems deployed in Tanzania, Madagascar, and in particularly in Somalia. We power 2 towns in Somalia every day. Lasanod and Garowe in Puntland and Somaliland are powered by our systems. Now we have ongoing projects in Nigeria, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, a couple of Indian Ocean islands, and we're working on systems also in Kenya and Tanzania. Now, what is a hybrid power systems? First, when we think about hybrid, everybody think about something exotic. In reality, if you look at the left-hand side of this chart, you see renewable energy, conventional energy, storage. If in place of storage you consider a hydropower system with a dam, you essentially have the grid over there. So hybrid, so using and dispatching different sources in real time, trying to secure the cheapest electron at every time, and a reliable and stable power supply is the rule of the game. So hybrid is the norm, is not the exception in energy system. What is the exception is running on diesel generators only. That is the exception. That is the exception in terms of cost. That is the exception in terms of unreliability. That is the exception in terms of maintenance requirement. So what is a hybrid storage system? Essentially is a portfolio of primary energy generation sources. Clearly, we try and put as much renewable energy as possible, making them work seamlessly, also on a small scale using storage. Up until now, storage was the missing part of the equation, in particular from an economic perspective, which made technically much more challenging to do hybrid power systems. Now storage has come to level of cost that make it economically feasible to guarantee stability in hybrid power generation system. Now, why do we hybridize? The same reasons why we are hybridizing our energy system with renewable energy. We hybridize existing mini-grid running on diesel generators first to reduce the cost of supply. There is a huge arbitrage between the cost of a solar electron, the cost of a wind electron, the cost of a biomass electron, and the cost of diesel generation. Second, reliability. Diesel generators are also unreliable, which force design that are extremely redundant, so modular design, which force also a very inefficient running regime. Third, sustainability, of course, we reduce emission. Fourth, time to market compared to the alternatives, that is grid extension. So even in those circumstances where taking the grid to a location that is currently served by diesel would make more economic sense than hybrid power generation system, it would mostly take years, while hybridization is something that can be done in a matter of months. Having said that, in several circumstances now, hybrid is cost competitive also with models of grid extension. This is something that has been discussed in other panels, and for comparison between centralized and decentralized energy system, I'll send you back to the working paper that has already been mentioned. Now, what are the key challenges of hybridization and therefore the suggestion that we want to give? First, there is no fits-all solution. While for solar plus storage solution for residential, for micro residential application, cost consideration force us to look at standard solution. As soon as we get into the tens, hundreds of kilowatt, and of course into the megawatt space, which is what Kenya KPLC is looking at, there is no one-fits-all solution. Different load profile, different status quo generation mix, different distribution need, and different mix of potentially available renewable energy sources makes the one-size-fits-all approach completely wrong. So you cannot do 10 different megawatt scale, 10 different megawatt scale, the same mix of storage, renewable, the same renewable, the same mix of renewable and conventional power generation. Each one requires an analysis of the load and the forecast of how the load is going to move in time, what is the generation mix available, what are the actual storage requirements, and what kind of storage is actually economically convenient, whether storage we want to time solar from the night. to look at the levels of modularity. First suggestion is whoever private or government entity wants to run an hybridization experiment, greenfield or on an existing microgrid, needs to have proper technical and economic advice. We are not advisors, so I'm not selling myself. We want to supply systems, but it needs proper advice. There is no fits-all solution. You cannot just look at what the neighbor has done and replicate, because most likely, almost invariably, your needs are different, and your solution, therefore, is different. Second one, we need to ensure stability. One reason why people sometimes get worried about hybrid power generation systems is that there are cases in which these systems have not worked. Making different sources work seamlessly is different also on the wider grid. I mean, events of blackout that plug Kenya, that plug its neighboring countries on a wider grid are example of issues of stability. Now, managing stability on a smaller scale is more difficult because there is less modularity, and every piece on the load side or on the generation side matter more, and therefore instability either on supply or on load, on a piece of supply, on a piece of load, has a magnified impact on the stability of the grid. Now, the progress in storage has made this challenge much, much more treatable. Storage is incomparably quicker than any conventional technologies in stabilizing voltage and frequency fluctuations. In Europe, in systems that are experiencing high penetration, in extended system, in wider grid, that are experiencing increasing penetration of renewables, storage is now accepted as part of the mix to stabilize frequency. And this is done with performances that are significantly higher than any conventional solution at a cost advantage. I mean, we are deploying in Spain a 20 megawatt storage system alongside a coal power station without any specific subsidy scheme or regulatory scheme. Why are we doing that? Because stabilizing the grid using a coal plant, so every conventional plant running in a dispatchable plant running in a grid needs to play its part in stabilizing the grid. So it must give some flexibility to the grid. Now, giving flexibility to the grid with a coal plant is a very expensive exercise in terms of heat and cost. Therefore, storage is now the most performing and the most competitive way of stabilizing grids, large and small, on a small scale. And the third key challenge, which is something that I'm sure the KPLC people that are designing the auction are looking at, is how you ensure that the system is going to perform. How are you going to write the warranties concerning something which is a relatively new thing using new technologies? Now, there are two ways of approaching this. The first one, as I said, you need to have technical consultants and economic consultants and legal consultants that are able to write not just product specifications and product warranty, but performance specification. This is uncharted territory. Every time we have to provide, even on a private-to-private basis, performance warranties, it is uncharted territory, and it is a learning process we are having with our clients, and we are having with battery suppliers. But there is no way around. You need technical, economic, and legal consultants that are able to write properly enforceable performance warranties. There is a simpler approach, though, which is essentially broadening the concept of power purchase agreement. So instead of just buying electrons, KPLC could buy dispatched electrons, and not by just kilowatt hour, but by dispatchable capacity, buying grid support services, buying reserve services within those grid. This is an approach that comes from, again, our private-to-private negotiation, in which we try and sell systems, we try to deploy on a turnkey basis, and then we get into negotiation on the performance warranty on that. and the client says, I don't want to pay you if the system doesn't work, how do we write that? At the end of the day, we almost invariably end up in a situation and say, what if I sell you a dispatchable kilowatt hour? You only buy me dispatchable capacity when the capacity is there, and you only buy me a kilowatt hour when my system actually delivers a kilowatt hour on that grid. So this is another innovative approach that can be conceived. And again, if we look at Europe on a wider grid, we are seeing the same thing. So not necessarily batteries are being sold to system operators, but reserve services, stabilization services are being sold to system operators, whereby the battery is paid on a capacity basis and it's based on a service basis when it is called into operation. But now, so key messages are: first, no solution fits for all situations. Second, be careful about stability. Designing a system, small systems with a small hybrid dispatchable system, it's not easy. It has to be done professionally. Third, there are innovative ways to contractualize this, and there is an increasing streams of successful example of this kind. Thank you for your attention. I'm finishing more or less sharp on time.
Thank you so much. And well, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end, but what is a good day's end without closing remarks? So I would like to invite David Otieno, who is the head of the Secretariat that is at the Africa EU Energy Partnership, to give us his closing remarks, and then thereafter we can go and enjoy a cocktail right outside to end the day even better. A round of applause for him.
Thank you so much, moderator. I don't think I want to take too much of our time. It's been quite an exhaustive day, a very good start. I think colleagues from Rest for Africa must be happy. I'm proud to be associated, of course, with Rest for Africa. I think the message is clear to the naysayers. The renewables is happening. And it's not just happening, but it's moving to new frontiers. I think this is something that has been clear, not only from the private sector here, but having gathered almost all the entities in the Kenyan sector, but you could say also in the African sector. We've had the utility here, we've had the government here, we've had the regulators here, we've had the civil society, we've had the development partners, we've had literally everyone in the room. And the message has been clear, without hesitation. Renewables is happening. And it's not just happening in China, not just happening in Europe, not happening in the United States. It is happening in Africa, it is happening in Kenya, and Kenya is a place to be. And I think this is one of the reasons why when Rest for Africa chose where to go, Kenya was, I know big decision to make. They had to come here. So I just want to acknowledge, let's say, the cooperation that the Africa-EU Energy Partnership has continuously had with Rest for Africa, which dates back less than 2 years ago. I remember well when Vigoti came with a letter to the partnership and said, Rest for Africa wants to do something in Africa. The political entities, or to whom I report to, told me, no, we don't think they are serious. Now when I go back to them, they actually ask me to tell Vigoti, or rather they tell him directly, come to Brussels and tell us what we need to do. And I think this is something that we are proud about. We are happy, and in terms of also being associated with Rest for Africa, this is something that we're going to continue, because energy, as you all know, I know that Vigoti mentioned in the morning that climate is not the reason for doing renewables, but it still remains one of the key reasons for doing renewables. And climate discussion going on in Paris, these need to be determined. For Africa, one of the, let's say, group, the entity will make it happen. So I just want to thank you. I don't want too much of them. I think we'll wait tomorrow. I just want to wish you a good evening, good session coming and now and tomorrow. Thank you so much, and thank you all.
Thank you so much, David. And of course, if only we can be as brief as he was tomorrow. I would really appreciate that. So any of you who are going to be on the panel tomorrow, please take note of that. And well, we're just about to go for the cocktail and enjoy it. I just want to invite James Archer to tell us a bit about the cocktail and of course ERM and why they choose to prepare a cocktail for us as well.
Thank you. Thanks. So greetings, and it's been a long day, lots that has been discussed. You are welcome to join about 25 yards behind me. There's drinks, there's refreshments, and I invite you guys all to come and join. Talk a little bit about the great things that we've heard today and the wonderful things that we're going to hear. We look forward to hearing about tomorrow. So it's James Archer from ERM. I have a few of my colleagues, and guys, please come and join us. Welcome. Karibu sana. Thank you.
So as we go to enjoy the cocktail, just a reminder, tomorrow we have the innovation event that I'm sure you're going to be seeing on your way out and also somewhere at the cocktail. So don't forget, there's an innovation event tomorrow and you're all welcome to attend. Thank you for being good people today and enjoy your evening.
like to convey, as I told you yesterday, would like to convey these main messages to the institutions. Or, so that you can do some introduction, background about SNELA, their role.
Check sound. Oh.
Is it amplified? Or?
It's having feedback. There's feedback. Check. Okay, it's gone. Yeah? Is it gone? Sound check, sound check.
Sound check.
Sound check. Can you hear? Yeah?
Shooting and zooming, and we try to find another slide.
Sound check. Ben, can you hear? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? No, not when I'm speaking now, but through the earpiece. Can you hear me when I speak? Right? I need to be sure he's speaking the sound.
Okay, but not like before, then you got it.
But it all depends on how long you respond to a question.
Yes.
So if we say 10 minutes, I respond to a question for 10 minutes, and I have 5 questions.
But before I was moderating the panel, and the time was saying 11 minutes and 0.5, and then it went to 0, and then back to 2, and then plan everything. We're time with 11, but not with. Now I know. Everything is late.
It took so much time to do it.
And everybody wanted to do the proper iftar.
Exactly. And everyone wanted to sit like they were giving keynote address. Jen, please, so we start. Let's not take 1 hour fixing sound. Do we have sound? So we start. See? Long day. This is the last thing. He's stabbing me.
Spostati solo di 10 cm da questa parte. Sì, così si vede bene il tuo nome.
You want to take off the... Yeah, yes. I can hold it.
Can I make reference to the conference or to...
Sorry?
Can I make reference to the conference? Okay. Just move again. I'm not convinced.
Sound check, sound check, sound check. Sound check. Mic check. Anthony, please, if you can hear me, let's do this thing quickly and get over with it, because I don't keep my guests waiting, okay? Anthony? Yeah? Can Anthony hear me? Can he hear me? I know, but I'm asking, can he hear the sound from here? That's what I want to know and be sure about. That when we go there, the sound will not be mute.
Yes, he's hearing you.
Anthony. Okay. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Okay,
Is it
can we
working?
start now?
No, don't worry.
Okay,
It's
let's
midnight.
do a sound check. Maybe you could say something about
Sound check, sound check. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? And is anybody supposed to say yes or what?
Let's just start with the sound if that's what he's already on. Yeah? Okay, picture, white balance. So, I'm just going to ask 4 questions so that we are within, it's not going to count down though, but 10 minutes. First, we're going to talk about NL projects in Kenya, or an overview of NL.
Okay, I don't speak about specific projects. We don't do by policy, so I can just mention that we're doing developments in different technologies. Okay,
yeah.
I don't refer to specific
Exactly. And is there specific criteria for the countries that you look at?
Sure, okay.
To
Yes,
invest in?
I will not say names of the projects or know where they are or how big they are, nothing about it.
And then we can delve deeper into Kenya specifically. What have you been able to achieve since setting shop here? And then also, what are some of the bottlenecks that you think should be dealt with going forward? And what your prospects for the, okay, those are 5 questions. What are prospects for the future of renewable energy investments in Kenya or sub-Saharan? Shall we start? Sorry.
This bad cut because I'm flying every weekend in and out like 15 hours.
Does it, when you're taking up the job, does it actually cover the job? Are you told there's going to be a lot of travel?
Last week I was in Abu Dhabi for Rome daily, so I flew in the night, spent the day there for a conference, and flew back in the same day. And I arrived yesterday here, staying here tonight, I'm leaving. Next week I'm going to Boston, one day. You know, every time I board a long-haul flight, I know, please, not another one.
That's a lot of travel.
It
You
is.
were also in Abu Dhabi as well.
Yes, I was in Abu Dhabi for 1 day, for 12 hours. And the pain is that Alitalia, the flight carrier.
I hope when you fly, you do business class. That way you can stretch out and sleep more.
I'll be dead. Like now. But in Alitalia, the flight carrier from Italy doesn't have direct flights to the destination, so we have to go through either Amsterdam or Paris. So it's like to come here, I went first to Amsterdam, and then I flew down here, which means I flew like 5 hours just to go back to Rome. It's a thing. Yes, exactly. Wow. My wife is
Oh. It must get crazy, yeah. How does she deal with the travels? Do you sometimes travel together?
Sometimes I manage to, we have kids, so not all the time. Sometimes we manage to go together. So we went to Boston, stay 1 week, which was very light for me and everything. Otherwise, not Boston. Sound check, sound check.
Anthony, the person I'm about to interview has a flight to catch tonight. So can we please... Can we work with a 2-shot if the 3-shot is so much? Anthony, please let's start.
Who is that?
He's in the back.
Ah, got it. He's in the back. He's the...
Yeah.
There was smacking it.
Ben, what's up? Huh? So what's the third camera for? There's seeing this one, and then I'm seeing one in the middle. Is the middle for the two? Huh? Okay. All right. So we start. Focus. And when you're giving those directions, please have in mind that I can hear you. So if you have to whisper to these guys, please do. Okay. We are at the for Africa Renewable Energy Expo 2018 at the Swarthmore University, and joining us now to highlight some of the issues on renewable energy as well as what NL Green Power is doing. And across we're joined by Valentino Rossi, who is the head of business development at NL Green Power. Thank you so much for speaking to us. To start, just give an overview of exactly NL Green Power does and is doing across Africa.
Good afternoon. So Renewable Green Power is today the largest operator and developer of renewables in the world. We operate about 40 gigawatts of renewable capacity. We develop yearly about 2.6 gigawatts of additional capacity. Every year we commission we put into another 2.5, 2.6 gigawatts that is accelerated. We are in not just renewables, so that is wind, PV, hydro, and even geothermal, which is very abundant in Kenya. And we're present in more than 20 countries counting. So we are operating and developing in basically all the continents at different stages, and we're in Asia. Within Africa, we're very keen on increasing our presence in Africa and we're also interested in.
All right. So you happen to be one of the biggest investors in renewable energy, not just in Europe, but also across the world. Is there a particular criteria that you use when you're choosing where to invest?
Sure. We typically look at 3 to 4 criteria when selecting new markets where to invest. So we look at whether the country has abundant renewable resources, that is wind, sun, there might be water or geothermal activity. Normally we look at least for 2 because we want to have a presence which spans at least 2 technologies to hedge the risks. The second criteria will be the growing energy demand, so a population which is growing, good fundamentals, an economy growing which requires more energy, and the fact is that renewables are very good at satisfying that energy, that growing energy demand fast. So that is the second criteria we look at. And the third criteria is typically at the structure of the market and, if possible, high prices for energy, because we know as a fact that renewables can be way cheaper than conventional energy, and therefore there is an interest that renewables are being brought into the energy matrix if the energy price is relatively higher, and therefore renewables can bring that price, that cost down for all consumers and for the entire economy.
All right. And speaking of the criteria as well, you look at the market and the demand. I take it that Kenya met that criteria of demand. But from your existence in Kenya, what have been some of the achievements for NL Green Power? And if any, please highlight some of them.
So yes, confirm Kenya fulfills for us the 3 criteria, as many other African, sub-Saharan African countries do. So we're very on being here. Open and honest a couple of years ago, and we are working on developing activities. We are working on several projects, different techniques, different stage of maturity. That will be, I think, assets for being put to work in this system. We in Kenya not putting fast enough according to our expectations, or as fast as countries by have done on renewable. We believe that this country has resources potential. There must be conditions put in place for private investors like us to come here, develop projects, fund them, finance them, and bring them to operations. Because we're here to bring those projects, drawing to existence, and of course that is a long path, which requires very clear regulations to be put in place.
All right. When you talk about regulations in place, also that while Kenya has the potential, the decisive exactly there. What do you think needs to be done for you to be able to invest more in a country like Kenya?
It's a topic which we discussed at length during the it's an interesting topic. There might be ways that we, particularly because we've been seeing very successful other markets similar to Kenya, is the use of auctions. Auctions were renewable projects, and of course depending on the mindful, but we think there is an essential way of Kenya to use auctions, renewable auctions, and fulfill different criteria. Of course, auctions allow several things to be reached, such as selecting the best developers and the most viable ones, that the projects that are selected will actually come to reality. Two, allows for better competitive price to be achieved to the benefit of the entire economy and finally consumers. Plus also for tweaks in the system so that additional benefits can be reaped, such as, for example, favoring local community, bringing in very much to manufacture panels or turbines, and or to for the participation of local community. So there are other ways in which option properly designed and properly implemented enhance and accelerate the penetration of renewable energy.
Right. Besides, where else are you looking to invest across Africa? Knowing that you've experienced just here as all the current, where else do you think to invest that you think will actually be more decisive across Africa?
I will just mention some of the results that we have achieved. I don't want to necessarily compare, but for example, we've been very successful. Ethiopia's been successful in the recent tenders. So they launched a locally managed tender for a 100 megawatt PV plant. We have been the awardees of that tender. Another example, virtual example, is Zambia, which has launched another tender under the umbrella of the IFC Scaling Solar Program for 100 megawatt. And again, in that we were one of the awards. So there are neighboring countries which are in different ways. Doesn't necessarily need to be the same ways for everybody. There are different approaches, which are very successful and very fast to implement renewables. And we made that in a couple of years, it will be and will be feeding electricity to the grid to consumer.
All right. What does the future look like for NL Green Power in Africa?
We are keen. We Africa as the next destination for renewables. That was true a long time ago for Europe, then for Latin America. There is a kind of different stance in Europe, but we definitely see Africa and Asia as the hot places to be because of the fit of renewables to the requirements and the need of the African populations and the African markets. Again, need for electricity and power, cheap electricity, fast time to market, and renewables can check all the boxes, all the three boxes. So definitely we're looking into Africa. There is plenty abundance of resources here in different markets. And definitely Kenya can be one of those hot places to be for us. If the proper conditions are in place.
So much. I appreciate it. That the head of business development at NL Green Power, Valentino Rossi, speaking to us about the projects that they have in Kenya and prospects for the rest of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So comparing Zambia and Kenya, Kenya in number is just a much bigger market. However, Zambia is faster, at least today, so we see more opportunities for concrete projects to line in years than in Kenya. Mentioned smaller than they could potentially be, so which is why we're there, at least our capacities and follow to Zambia. It might be the more for Kenya, which is a bigger market.
Thank you. That's Anthony. Is that okay? Okay. I think we have the next one. With the next one, yeah? Yeah? Okay.
Sure. One thing.
Anthony. 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 And this Anthony. 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 You see my mic is blinking red. That's why I'm melting. No, you see. We can't both be green. Both. Okay. We ready? Okay, so you can leave it. Yes, but we're supposed to. No, people just cut and play. Just cut him into and then play.
We had the ones. We had Roberto and Valentino. So
fact that Kenya's urban population is urban electrification rates at 60%.
I can do links for you, it's fine.
Urban electrification rates at 60%, while the rural electrification rates at 10%. So, to close that up, to invest to electrify, yes, to electrify the communities, or the rural areas.
Sorry, what's the gap?
60% urban electrification.
60% urban.
And 10% rural electrification. Huh?
60% urban electrification and
10% rural electrification. You've met Luca, right?
yeah, I've said hello, Bessie.
Okay. And
That's
Luca,
a gap. That's a gap.
are you living? Oh, we'll see more. At 8.
No. Cornelius and I mentioned it, but I'll have to lower than we can.
Okay. Let me go. So I'll ask you tomorrow tonight, if you like.
Okay. Okay. Okay, no problem.
10% urban electrification and 10%
Rural electrification.
that's a gap.
So that means that despite, even despite the potential for renewable energy, this is even despite the potential for renewable energy. So there needs to be more. So the potential is there, but
Okay.
renewable energy solutions for East Africa, new frontiers.
And what time are you leaving here? Are you coming here tomorrow?
So at the moment, there's geothermal, I'm sure, geothermal wind.
Let me take a cold, let me take a glass of wine then it comes. Okay. And I come and start speaking. Yeah. It's 3 of them. La chapa, eh? Yeah. Chapa dulu kuja kama uko sawa. Check 1 2. Coming to you live from the Strap. Hold there. New Frontiers. Do you want to use the Nini? Which are the new cameras?
This one.
Yeah.
No, this one. This one.
So, what do we use? Even the light is yours?
Yes.
Good stuff. These were some of the highlights. What came out is 50%. The deliberations continue.
Let me see if I can do.
Sorry, where? I have 3 of them, huh? The host of other sponsors, keep it NTV. These were some of the highlights. My name is Lavin from this area. We will live to you. Can I make top in business? And then I give you my bumper. I can actually use top in business. I'll give you my bumpers. Welcome to Top in Business Vans. This is what's the background? Oh. Sir. Tunatumia mic ya nini? Hii hapa. You don't mind that sound, huh? Welcome to Top in Business Events, coming to you live from the Strathmore University. Earlier on today, of course, we had day 1, hordes of discussions and looking at different matters, energy, Alex Day, and here were some of the highlights. Energy Go, ensuring, with Alex, we talk about infrastructure. Sir? I wish I would tembea. No, it's okay. I would move for the first one because it's new. I would want to move and. Oh, you're doing it. It's okay. Tell you what. Let's go have something and then come. Because you're still here. Yeah, let's go and have something and come. Please go on. Enjoy. Yeah. And. You can vary the shots. Can you get the camera off and then you can use vary shots? Oh, off the tripod. Shikilia. Yeah. Handheld, yeah. So are you seeing you at Norfolk? Are you going there or what? Are you tired?
I'm not going to Norfolk.
Are you serious? You haven't just said you're going to Norfolk now.
Oh my God.
That's what he said. I also agree with him, and I'm going there because he's going. I don't know. At 6 o'clock, you are here at 6. For tomorrow? Are you giving a speech, like vote of thanks? Uh-huh. Oh, you're handling the PR for the event.
1, 2.
Yeah.
1, 2.
Are you just volunteering? Where are you guys? Oh, you. All right, guys. No, that's what I'm saying. Let's go. I'm not removing. I'm not escaping it. I'm not escaping it. I want to get it. I want to get it out of the way, and let's have a chat. Yeah, maybe it's Rest for Africa, guys. It's Rest for Africa Expo, Renewable Energy Solutions for Africa Expo. Yeah, it's Rest for Africa.
I'm going to record this.
Let's do this, guys. Yeah. Sorry, madam. Excuse me. Just give us a few minutes. Just kidogo tu nifanye tu recording alafu tutatoka. Yeah, Juma's left. Oh, you need to see my chat. Lakini nasikia KTN mmefagiliwa pia, watu wengi wameenda nini? Have you been approached? Did you apply for the business editor thing? Why?
For something else.
Which one?
Investigative journalism.
Why?
I love investigations, but it's just that KTN, there's a criteria for being an investigative journalist. And I also told them to consider me. Oh my Jesus.
One, two, sound, mic test. Floor manager. I'm your camera guy. I just want to. Anto. Let's click. Hey, Matthews, please don't disturb us. We're busy now. We're busy. Disturb us. Anto. Yeah. So anyway, I already. What do you think happens to business journalism? Like, think will be a